All right, Fiona, good to see you today. And
Likewise.
how's everything going?
Good, everything's good. I'm enjoying the sleep coaching program and really nice to like connect with fellow, I guess, recovered insomniacs. So it's
Yeah,
all going
it's
well.
always, it kind of feels like I was talking to another sleep coach about this, and it feels like almost like talking to a Vietnam veteran or somebody who like went through like some really awful stuff for a minute there, and it's good to talk to somebody who really has a very strong idea of exactly what the struggle was like, and it's always good to see somebody else who's managed to overcome and come out on the other side.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. Like I think specifically also when I was like going through it and like the depths of one's despair as you've also experienced, like it's the kind of thing that you really want to like speak to so many people about and almost like have validated.
Hmm.
And it's so hard to like find that like person who you can relate to and who's like actually like had that kind of experience. And now, of course, like as somewhat certified like sleep coaches and hearing so many people's experiences, we're like, yes, I know exactly what that felt like. And it's definitely very comforting. And it was also very comforting once I started to recover, to actually like find little like glimmers of hope in other people's stories.
Yeah, especially with
Yeah.
especially when you see failures during your recovery process. That's, I mean, because you always have that little doubt. I can't speak for you, but I would imagine that you had the same thing where I did and that what any other recovering insomniac had, where they had that little doubt in the back of their head, like, it's not going to last. This is just like that you just lucked out last night or the past few days or whatever. It's not going to be so.
Mhm.
I'm sure that you had something like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And this is, I think, where like it's just so important to like highlight that recovery really isn't just like this purely linear process of, okay, like I've started off sleeping like nothing at all, and then like the next night you're gonna sleep 2 hours, 3 hours, etc. And that it is just like such a like bumpy road, and that those setbacks are just like especially just as much like as you alluded, like once you start sleeping and you have those good nights, and it's like that confirmation of like, okay, like now you have something that you could so like valuably lose.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely. It was like recovery was difficult in the sense of like both when things were good and also like when things were bad, it always like felt like I was gonna go back to square one.
Yeah, and that's such a common fear from the I'm sure that you've heard it from the insomnia immunity students in your own program. For listeners, full context, we're in different groups on the sleep coach school insomnia immunity program, so we've never worked together on calls directly, but I can only I'm sure that the people I would be shocked if the people that we worked with, even though we haven't worked with each other's people, that if they didn't have the same exact concerns where
Mhm.
they've found this thing, they've had a brief period of success or maybe even a longer period of success, whatever it is, and now they've tasted real good quality sleep again, and now it's this like this precious thing that they're just so afraid to lose.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I actually wanted to ask you because we haven't actually discussed this topic in more depth, I guess, amongst the two of us. But what exactly were like setbacks like for you, and maybe like do you want to walk us a little bit through what that journey looked like?
Yeah, so I was my path to recovery was a little bit different because I had insomnia for 7 years, and I adopted some of the healthier things throughout those 7 years, but there are some things that I was still doing really wrong. So my path to recovery throughout those 7 years, it was really fragmented. I didn't see because I wasn't doing everything that I was supposed to be doing because I didn't have the healthiest possible outlook. I didn't really see any progress. I was in yo-yo land for a really long time. Only after I started signing up for the sleep coach school, it was weird. Like the first night that I signed up for a sleep coach school, that's when my progress really started to get upwards really really quickly. So because I was doing a number of things correctly, I saw really drastic improvement really quickly. And then, of course, like, so I've been in recovery for like the past. I don't know, 10 months or a year or so. Oh yeah, coming up on a full year. And I would have the occasional bad night of sleep, maybe like 1 or 2 nights back to back. But the what really stood out to me was how different they felt, both in terms of like the insomnia hangover the next day, but also in terms of how I started to view them. They weren't the worst thing in the world anymore. They weren't like the proof. I didn't see them as evidence of my life will always be like this.
Mhm.
I think that's like the big, once you start to really feel that, I think that's a really key indicator that things are starting to change for you for good. When you genuinely feel that, don't feel that fear anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I have the same experience. Like yes and no. Like I feel like at the beginning, also like I had definitely like the ups and downs and the yo-yos of like thinking that I was like on the recovery path. I luckily didn't have it for 7 years. It was about a year. But still, like I can't imagine like going for that long, kind of with like those ups and downs. And then once I'd kind of committed to getting better, I didn't find the sleep coaching school, but I found a coach that had also been trained with the sleep coach school. And
Mhm.
it's funny enough, like same thing, as soon as I had that educational component, it almost felt like I could never go back to like square one. And
Mm.
definitely things like would monumentally like improve. But then I feel like my speed bumps or like my setbacks were on a very like routine basis. Like it would be like the first or like first 2 weeks I'd like sleep perfectly, and then I'd be like bad like off for a few days. And I feel like that cycle for me was very much like adapting kind of like that educational component of like, okay, what is actually happening?
Mhm.
Fully letting go, allowing sleep to come naturally. And then at one point, almost becoming hyper aware of the fact that I was like getting better. And then there was like this over like fixation on sleep again. And then I'd almost kind of like come back to that place where like, okay, again, re-educate yourself. And it almost like felt like that, like kind of ups and downs. And then it would get a little bit periodically a little bit less. But I did feel like every single time, especially like after like three like sleepless nights, I'd feel pretty desperate. And I think that main component that would always like pull me out of it was like, okay, this is not a problem that I need fixing.
Mhm.
Um, and then kind of like add in the fact that for like the past 6 months, I've been pretty much living out of a suitcase, and I feel unbelievably like blessed that I have this opportunity to kind of like travel the world and also work simultaneously. But there's still that element of like, okay, will the jet lag affect my sleep? Or like, will different sleep locations, or oh my goodness, I have to sleep on a couch. And this is all like in a way been like an amazing challenge, has kind of been wrapped into those like speed bumps as well, and has almost kind of arrived at a place where I'm just so much more confident that there's absolutely nothing that I need to ever actively do, if that makes sense.
It so does. Yeah, I just realized you are you're going through the absolute worst fear setting for insomniacs. Where to your point, you're constantly you're like travel. Big. Yeah, travel's a huge trigger for a lot of people for so many different
It
reasons.
is.
But it probably did you more benefit than harm in the long run. Because to your point,
Mhm.
it's like after a certain amount of time. Yeah, how long have you been traveling for? Remind me.
Yeah, for about like on and off for 8 months.
Okay.
Like I left Europe fully in November, but I was like traveling and living. Like I haven't had my own apartment since July.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so at your point, it's like you've seen it all. You've seen every like so many different combinations of, delayed flights or getting into your
Mhm.
hotel room a little bit late, or the light is just there's too much noise, whatever. You've seen it all. You've seen every single thing that would give an insomnia somebody suffering from insomnia a lot of fear for that night. But now I'm sure that by now you've developed enough experience and you've had collected so many of those different coaches call them different terms, but I like to use the word surprises where it's like, oh wow, like I had so many reasons why I shouldn't be able to sleep last night, and I was able to sleep just fine. Like I slept really like I've slept better than I did even before I developed insomnia.
Mm. You do now?
I do now, but
Have,
I'm saying like for you, like
yeah.
I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
am surprised if you didn't have those sort of surprising moments in your.
Yeah. I did a little. Like for example, when for instance, I started my my coaching or like kind of like the progress towards recovery in May, and I was in Colombia at the time. And then on my way back, I was going to a yoga retreat.
Mm,
And I don't know, like I never really pinpoint like why I can't sleep. I definitely think that when you travel east, it's like so bad for like your sleep because it's like you can when you're traveling like west, like you've accumulated that sleep drive and your body's tired, so you can fall asleep like when you're meant to.
Mm,
Whereas like traveling east and it's like seven different time zones, it's just really difficult to like force yourself to go to sleep when you're not tired. So
mm.
like that whole week, and add on the fact that when you just don't sleep, there's like that increased anxiety that you should be when you're also like trying to perform a very physically demanding yoga practice.
Yep.
So like I was like kind of like, okay, that was shitty. And I remember feeling quite anxious back then. And then I got again when I went to Singapore. So it's always when I travel east, went to visit a friend, slept on her couch, and again I just could not like it always like felt different. It was definitely like the jet lag, but because of course I had this experience with insomnia, like it definitely turns into like a bad reaction of like of the sleeplessness. And I think that that's also like a very clear distinction to make, like people like us who have maybe a disordered like view on sleep versus like just experiencing just like normal jet lag. But to your kind of like points, those surprises have definitely made me stronger in my recovery. I'd say like maybe it all kind of came sooner than I wanted. And I think that when I started feeling a lot better in July, August time, don't get me wrong, I was definitely kind of fearful of like the next coming months that I had ahead of me. Like, okay, there's like so much travel. There's like genuinely like staying in so many different places with different friends, hotels, etc. And that did kind of like raise some alarm bells. But it's also in the end, I think recovery truly is like it is a choice. Like it's a choice to also just say like, okay, well, even if there is going to be moments of discomfort, like in the end, I know I will be okay because I have plenty of evidence. And you too, in your 7 years of insomnia, I think that that was maybe like very clear, like, okay, very clear evidence that no matter what, you will be okay because you have been so far.
And now that after while you were saying that, I realized that those experiences are not only nice to haves,
Hmm.
I think they're totally mandatory. What I've been telling some people in some of the students in the Insomnia Immunity Program is that even if you have, let's say that we take a chronic insomnia and it's day one for them, and they have no education at all, none of the correct strategies and tactics to overcome insomnia, and they downloaded a perfect understanding of the stuff that we teach at Sleep Coach School, and they knew the material inside and out perfectly. That's still only one side of the equation.
Yeah.
The other side is they still need the experience.
Yeah.
They need all that time of putting it into practice and encountering different situations and like, oh, this stressful thing at work is coming up. How am I going to sleep with that? Or I forgot to buy myself my favorite supplement. How am I going to sleep? Whatever. And I mean, you have no choice but to have that. I know we were talking about using the word confidence for sleep, and it's kind of like a tricky word, but for lack of a better term, we'll just stick with that for now. Your sleep confidence will just build up and over time, and you'll just realize it's like, hey, I've seen this stuff before, and the past top 5 times I
Hmm.
went to it, maybe the first time, 2 times I wasn't able to sleep because it was still, very scary for me. But now it doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I keep trying to stress that for clients who have started adopting they started to do all of the right things and stop doing all of the wrong things. And there's that period where they feel a little discouraged because they haven't seen that progress yet. And I think that there's a fear that they can say, I knew it. This is also bullshit. This is another insomnia thing that isn't gonna get me any sleep.
Hmm.
But it's important to stress, like, I hear you, I understand, but give it time. It needs a bit of time for you to start to see results.
Yeah, that's actually such a big one, like nail on the head. I think that especially at the beginning, like it is quite an uncomfortable feeling. And I've also had the same experience with some of the people that I've been working with, which is like, it's like the daily check-in of like whether or not they have or have not slept well. And it's like, there's just like a bigger picture. And I think that is also like such a huge part that kind of encompasses what those setbacks look like, right? So when you are experiencing a setback or you're still like maybe fixated on a specific thing that is going to maybe aid your sleep, it's like it's not the success on the day-to-day basis. It's more kind of like the general, like bigger picture of like moving in the general direction of of being okay with the situation in which you're in, and eventually like letting go of that control. What would you actually like? How do you actually advise people to to let go during those situations? I find it quite a difficult conversation to have.
What do I advise for them when they're in that at that initial
Kind
period?
of like in the fixation, yeah, and the fixation on like the day-to-day, like kind of like the battle, right? That Daniel also like mentions like the win-lose thinking, and what
Hmm.
would you actually say to someone in that kind of position?
Yeah, so my go-to answer for that lately, and maybe this will change, but it's been to stress that real progress isn't charting. Is weirdly enough, it's counterintuitive for other people. I know that you understand this, but for people not who's currently suffering from insomnia, isn't whether or not you slept well the night beforehand. It's not the amount of hours that you
Yeah.
slept. It's more.
Hmm.
It's way more about the outlook that you have towards it.
Hmm.
That's the important thing.
Hmm.
Wait, I don't. It's like I almost don't even care how much sleep you're getting in the interim, because it's like okay, if you slept well, great. But the important thing is if you're looking at it in a much more healthier and sustainable and almost passive way, because that's when the good quality restorative sleep will typically follow. So that's been my go-to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good advice. I think it's sometimes just quite difficult when people are just so, and I feel like all of us are just very maybe perfectionists, sorry, and we'd like to kind of like have full control over things, and it's quite difficult to like move away from like the day-to-day discomfort and kind of like really see this as a more holistic approach, right? Kind of like something that is going to it take time.
To your point about the people being fixated, because you're right, a lot of people are in who suffer from insomnia have that very perfectionist mindset. So it does, from what I've seen, the it's very unintuitive for them to just drop it and let it go because sleep is made possibly the only thing that gets better the less attention that you give it, the less that you work for it. But the I don't know, for lack of a better word, I hate the vibe that I've been getting from clients that I've been talking to is that it's almost reassuring for them because they'll start to realize that oh like it makes sense that I haven't been able to sleep as well because been going about it the totally wrong way. And weirdly enough, like maybe you've seen something different, but the people I've been talking to have been very open to that concept, or at least thinking about it. Like, huh, okay, maybe like it almost feels like almost get like a small bit of hope from them after I explain that to them. Is that something that you've seen, or is that something that have you seen something differently?
Yes and no. Like I'd say that sometimes it takes people time to really like arrive there. And I do think that when we're still looking into this kind of like survival brain and like brain that is trying to keep us safe, like I think that a lot of times we're trying to almost like disprove that to be true.
Hmm.
So it's I think for some people, yes, 100%. It's like, wow, it makes so much sense. And that, I feel like that was also my experience too. Like when I was first like going through recovery and certain things where I discovered kind of like about the recovery process, I was like, okay, actually that makes sense.
Hmm.
But I do also like want to kind of give emphasis to the fact that there sometimes like you do need a little bit more reminding and a little bit more of a nudge of like, okay, you're actually safe. Like this is purely a perceived threat, and that is something that genuinely does take time.
It's almost like a leap of faith when you're starting out. I mean,
Oh yeah, definitely.
to just take confidence and comfort that like, hey, it's okay. You don't have to do anything. Just drop
Mhm.
it. It's fine. Yeah, and it takes a long time to rediscover that trust, especially after that first or second scary speed bump, because those are the ones that terrified us the most. That's when we had that shit. I knew this is bullshit. But
Mhm.
the good news is that once you start to get by those, they just get better. They don't, not only do they not feel as bad almost always, but they just they don't seem to last as long.
Yeah.
That's been the case for you too, I imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess also like to slowly start wrapping up, I'd say that like my last little piece of advice for anybody who's actually going through this kind of situation is to know that speed bumps, one, are definitely very normal part of that recovery journey. And two, you don't ever know how long they're gonna last.
Yeah.
And almost kind of like three, during that moment, just offer yourself a little bit of grace and like self-kindness, and know that those speed bumps are actually very important parts of like your recovery. It's just coming back to that place of like reminder that you are on the right page, on the right kind of, sorry, kind of like path,
Mhm.
and letting go of that perceived threat and that inherent kind of like belief that if there's something wrong is gonna take time, and speed bumps are also part of that. But yeah, how about you? What would you actually say to someone in that situation?
Yeah, I like how you just framed it there, where you said that where you said like they're necessary. Like that's what part of the healing process looks like. Because how I've been describing it before as like this annoying little thing where it's like it's I've been framing it as this annoying thing that inevitably will come up in the recovery journey, and it's fine. But I like what you just did there, where you described it as no, this is what recovery looks like. That's
Mhm.
supposed to happen. You need the bad experience as well, because it's having a healthier outlook on sleep is not doesn't just involve looking at good nights in the right way, but it's also about looking at the more uncomfortable nights in the appropriate way. Oh, I accidentally gave a thumbs up
Mhm.
on Zoom, but
That's okay.
yeah, yeah. So I really like that. I might steal that from you. So
I'm glad. I think that definitely these conversations are so helpful. And for anybody listening, just know that there are definitely other people out there that have recovered, and hopefully you can have find little moments of hope. And also, if you need help from anybody, maybe John and myself, in that regard, you can also like check out our details in the description below.